Good. Shaking with the peoples, man. Welcome to Battle Boy Media. Just tapping in with the peoples. Hope all is well. Hope all is well, man. Today, I'm just doing, a light build, light build, very light build. Nothing too much in particular in reference to the episodes of what it is that I've been doing, in the last couple days or so, just chopping it up with the peoples, man. So definitely shout to the peoples that's been tapping in. Shout to the peoples that's been subscribing, liking, engaging. Definitely appreciate that. Um, yeah, pretty much that's what it is. Definitely appreciate those that's, you know, welcoming and engaging for the most part overall. Um, Shout to, you know, the endless friends that, you know, text after a build, um, family members, associates, etc., etc. Definitely appreciated. So do like, do share, do engage, um definitely subscribe and definitely set the notification off, man. Like I mean I'm not big on hitting nobody up before I actually go on. I just go on when the energy moves you to actually do things. Like I just get on there and do it unless it's something dealing with, the avenue of what's actually plan to, produce to the peoples. Can't go one, go salutes. You already know. Or um definitely definitely shout to the hoodies, man. Shout to the hoodies that's been, sending that strong support system. And definitely been sharing as well too. Again, like I said, today is just gonna be like, just a regular build, man. A regular build. And as you can see by the thumbnail, there's a train up there, right? And it's just, for some reason I was talking with one of my brothers and it just, drove me to actually, think and reflect on, you know, what it is that we was actually talking on or building on. Yeah. So if I'm not mistaken, a thumbnail read, what happens when, a joyride becomes your permanent way of traveling, right? And I know people probably like, or whoever's actually tapped in or tuned in, they probably looking at that like, where is he coming from? Peace, salute, crossroads. They probably looking at that like, what am I talking about as far as what if a joyride becomes your permanent way of traveling? And again, like I said, I'm just reflecting on the build that I had with my brother, and it just, it moved me to the point where it's like, yo, you know what? Like, maybe this is something that just needs to be spoken on or expressed based off of my own, experiences. Um, so as you can see in the thumbnail, there was a train up there, right? And we all know that trains travels to destinations. Let's say, you know, I'm headed to wherever it is on a train, going to Allerton in the Bronx. Shout to the peoples in the X, man. Let's say I'm going to Allerton and I don't know my way, and I, hit my brother up to ask for directions or whatever the case may be, and I take my brother up, for his word as far as like directing me to Allerton train station, right? And I get on that train and, I'm on there and I'm just replaying the convo of directions to get me, to Allerton or whatever the case may be. And I end up getting off on the wrong stop, right? And things is just looking unfamiliar and I'm walking around trying to gain a sense of direction. And I'm calling, my brother that I got the directions from and I can't get in contact with him. So now I'm like, now I have to, ask people, the conductor, whatever the case may be. Automatically, and I'm speaking for self, I would get upset with the person that I got the directions from, you know. Um, and of course, eventually I may figure it out, may get frustrated, hop back to where I'm from, or whatever the case may be. But I'm saying all that to say, throughout that whole process, you never heard me mention that one time as far as me looking up the directions for myself, even after I spoke to my brother for the directions to get to Allenton, right? But then automatically, I will blame my brother for getting me lost. And all that's pretty much to say is throughout this journey in life, right? There's nothing wrong with asking for directions, but it will definitely come a point in time where you'll have to do the work for yourself, do the research for yourself in order to get you to the destination of where it is that you're trying to go. Or even on a larger scale or on a broader perspective on that topic, you may have people that may give you directions, navigating you in a direction where they may want you to go. They may not give you the 110% honest directions to get to the destination because they feel like you have to rely on them to get to where it is that you're trying to go. And you could utilize that in a lot of different avenues of life. Um, Maybe that'll be something that I can utilize as well, because again, I'm not up here speaking with the finger pointed at no one individual, just speaking on life and a journey that, we're all using, being that this vehicle of the flesh that we're in is what's taking us to certain destinations physically. Um, some of us, even myself, done went on a lot of joy rides outside of a train, jumping in V's just to, go to wherever and just ended up somewhere else and then ended up landing in a whole different predicament as opposed to what I initially thought, we was actually going in that car for. So again, for the most part, I'm emphasizing like if we don't take, control of our fate, it's always gonna be driven in the hands of another person. And that other person, like we would never know, where it is that they're actually driving us to unless you're actually paying attention to, the bumps in the road that we actually travel, as opposed to doing the research ourselves and um getting to that destination on our own. And there's nothing wrong with asking for directions. There's definitely nothing wrong. I think the wrong part about that is just always relying on someone, not giving yourself enough credit or giving myself enough credit to actually do the research in order to get me to where it is that I'm trying to get to. You know? Yeah, so that's just some food for thought as far as like journeying through this thing called life that we're all, you know, going through, being that, God woke us up today. All right. Peace, bro.
Yeah, peace, peace. Thanks. I was taking it in. I appreciate you once again. Another dope bill, but that's a dope metaphor.
Hmm.
You have me over there thinking about a few different things. I want you to keep talking. Um, what I first realized is that the joy is actually in the ride itself. You know what I
Mm,
mean? The joy is in the ride. But on the flip side, what you made me think is that you have to remember to get off at your stop.
ooh, Jules dripping in
Um,
gems right now.
Indeed, and a lot of times we get on this joyride of life, and we find ourselves getting off at other people's stop, and that's that unfamiliar territory you talked about.
Indeed.
So that becomes a challenge and leads to a lot of people failures, you
Mm.
know, caught up in the joy of the ride, but forgetting to get off at your destination,
Ooh,
finding unfamiliar territories, and now you have to deal with the challenges of whatever comes with that for your lack of awareness or your lack of attention,
no doubt.
you know. And then I went on to think about, I equate those challenges to people with this surfing. Nowadays, they're getting on top of the trains, right? When I was younger, we used to get in the middle of the train between the cars, And then when we go through the tunnels and the train bend and swerve, it's crazy in there. And that's those dark places in those
Mhm.
tunnels on
Indeed.
the joy of life, right? There's dark places and tunnels. And then you made me think, all these things came to mind for what you were saying, beloved. That's why I appreciate you. And then I remember when I was young, I used to told to be afraid of the dark.
Mm.
And here I am facing one of those fears, because we're always told face your fears. And now as I mature, in today's time, I realize some places are dark for a reason. Some places are dark for a reason. Some places you should fear.
Mm.
Right? And I can't help to say prison. It don't have to be a physical prison. It could be a mental prison, an emotional prison, right?
True.
Some places are dark for a reason, and some places you should fear. It's a difference between being scared, which I equate to being cowardly, but fear is healthy. Fear is healthy. So you should fear certain challenges. Not all challenges. You should rise to the occasion nonetheless, but fear certain challenges, right? Fear
No doubt.
certain dark spaces, or be aware and bring the light to those dark spaces.
Mm.
And you shine your truth and you'll see yourself through.
No doubt.
But again, good Bill, I'm on the clock right now. I stepped out for a minute,
Appreciate that.
but I'm gonna continue to stay tapped in. I'm gonna
No
continue to
doubt.
stay tapped in.
Appreciate
99
the support.
shares, G. 99 shares, man.
You already know. You already
All
know.
right,
Yeah, and to add
peace.
on, peace. To add on to, what the brother just finished saying, right? Like, and again, I'm using my own experiences, right? Like when I was younger, right? For some reason, not even for some reason, I was into stealing cars heavy in my early teenage years, right? And like the brother just finished saying, right? The thrill is in the joyride, regardless of how dangerous it can be, as far as car crashing, as far as the owner coming out and God knows what, that person will do to protect their vehicle, or getting arrested by officers. I remember one time, you know, I jumped in to a vehicle with one of my bros. They just finished, grabbing a car, and we jumped in, loaded up the V with the peoples, and we just joyriding like I'm actually speaking on right now. And we all know, in Brooklyn, there's stop signs almost on every corner of a block if you not driving on like a main road, right? My bro that's driving, he decides to press the gas on one of the side blocks. Now, when I look on the speedometer, he's at 60, 70, not knowing like 50 feet, like we're gonna have to stop, you know, because there's a stop sign there before we actually keep going. But while he's going from 60, he ended up going to 80 in total. And while we're going down the block, I could see that there's a double parked car. But what we didn't see, there's a double parked car on the left hand side of the block. And then as we continued on, there was a kid laying in the street on the right hand side. So my bro had to do a right then left because we didn't see the kid laying in the street until we got past the double park car on one side. So he had to swerve. But at this time, we're going, I remember seeing 80. So when he turned on one side and tried to bring it back, I just looked over No, it was a double park car on the right hand side, and the kid was laying in the street on the left hand side. So when he went like this and he did that little shift going that fast, when I turned my head, I looked like, my window's right here. But being that, we're on two wheels now, I look and I could just see the concrete like right there. So all I said to myself is like, all right, we crashing. And that's exactly what happened. Boom, boom. Car slid on one side and just like slid almost into the, intersection of the block. And I thought we was gonna die being that we was going so fast, but once the vehicle came to a stop, right? I looked around, everybody's moving around. I'm like, man, everybody's good. Yeah, we jumped out the vehicle and everybody dispersed. And while I'm walking away, right, I'm looking at the car. I'm like, wow, people start gathering around, but once they see a bunch of teenagers just hopping out the car, they looking, they shaking their head. And I'm walking, I'm like, yo, you know what? I ain't never doing nothing like that again. That's crazy. You know how it is when, we put ourselves in a position and, that be the time that we find and give time to speak to God or whatever the case may be. I guess that was one of, my moments, yeah. Yeah, so um about 15 minutes later, my same boy, he comes through with another car and I'm walking with one of my day one. And this is while I'm explaining to him what took place. But when my boy pulled up in the new car, I said, "Oh," he like, "Yo, what up?" I'm like, I looked at my boy, I looked at the V, pew! I went for the thrill again, you know? And my boy's looking at me like, you just finished saying this, that, and the third. And sometimes a hard head makes a soft one, a soft yeeks, yeah. And I was just one of those individuals where I had to feel in order to learn. Um, as you can see, that incident, it wasn't enough for me to learn. Like I still went for that thrill, for that joyride. And I rode that joyride in vehicles until the wheels fell right off. Um, and again, I'm just saying that to say, like I just finished mentioning moments ago, right? Um, if someone else has control of a wheel while you're in a joyride, you never know where you're gonna end up. You may make it to your destination, you may crash, God forbid, like I did, may get arrested, and I'm speaking arrested based off of it being a stoli back then. Um, you just never know where you'll end up. So, in that sense, right there, that I'm speaking, joy, that kind of a joyride, like I was definitely doing too much at that time, at that age. It's not too much, kids thinking about, you know, stealing cars at the age of 13, 14, 15 years old. Most kids want to, go out and play, be in a park, shooting some hoops or whatever the case may be. But, when you're trying to be something that you're not, you end up in predicaments. Um, and that was a no brainer. There was no research for me to do in order to get to a destination because they definitely had, bus passes where I could have went on a bus or whatever the case may be. But, you know, when you're immature and you get yourself caught up in certain things, like you you have to reap the repercussions that come behind it. There was also a thing when I was younger, and I'm speaking on a sake of joyride. where they had this thing called hang 10. And this is when you'll hang behind of a bus while it's driving from stop to stop to stop to stop. You just find a place to put your foot on and hold on to something on the back of the bus, and boom, you on a ride. Like, never really was my thing, but again, I did try it. Um, it wasn't for me. Uh, very, very scary. Um, I found no joy in that. So it only took me one time in order for me to make a decision like, you know what? Like, all right, my people's is doing that. Like, that ain't my thing. I don't feel secure in that right there. Nevertheless, my people's, they rode that wave, up until whatever. Um, and again, so what's in a thumbnail, right? We got the train on a thumbnail, right? And the train pretty much symbolizes us as individuals. We all know the trains make numerous stops um, along the way. And in our lifetime, we're gonna make a lot of stops as well too. And again, like I said, I want to stress, like, there's nothing wrong with asking people for directions or whatever the case may be, but we all have the ability, to do the research on how to get from point A to point B, as opposed to just taking someone's word on navigating us to that destination. Um, don't let that, well, I definitely learned the hard way of not letting that be a comfortable space for me to be in, because everyone just doesn't have that intent on getting you to where it is that you need to be. So, as long as we all as individuals have, breath and air in our lungs, like, we can do that work for ourselves. A lot of us, even myself, I put a lot of faith, a lot of trust, a lot of loyalty in others, and ended up getting the short end of the stick, right? And like I said, I'm one of those that's real hard headed. Like, I really got to feel in order to learn. And throughout my travels, I definitely had to learn, um, and be aware of things later on in life and take it for what it is. As much trust and loyalty that I put into others, like, I don't think I ever have put that much trust and loyalty and belief in myself. you know, I started doing that later on, but they say, late is better than never, which is cool. But again, and this is mainly for, you know, the younger ones in life, that still have a lot more life ahead of them. God willing, I do too, but they have a lot more living to do than I did. And I'm just speaking, for them to have the wisdom to actually, do things a certain kind of way and not have to, suffer so much of the pitfalls that me and a lot of my other brothers had to actually go through. Definitely, definitely, definitely. Because my story, our story, definitely doesn't have to be your story, you know? Um, and this is what separates knowledge from wisdom. A lot of us may know what's up, may know what it is to do, and still do what it is that we choose to do and get the outcome that we end up getting, right? But wisdom is like, you know, not having to put yourself in a predicament based off of somebody else's experience. And that's just one less obstacle or hurdle that has to be jumped because you took heed to this individual's experiences and how it turned out for him. So you don't even, you see something similar to what it is that I just finished explaining, and you already know how to get around it. It's just as simple as that. Go right around it and not even exercise that at all because you're equipped with what took place prior to someone else letting you know. And it's just it's just a jewel of life, one of the jewels of life, man. Being that we dripping in gems over here, you know. So I definitely wanted to, just touch on, have a little build, with the peoples that's been tapping in. Um, Not to put your fate, my fate, in another person's hand because you're not gonna, you won't know where you end up. Um, as long as your belief is where it's supposed to be and it stands firm and you pray to, your higher power, your God, whoever it is that you believe is that for you, um, that's the protection that's needed. The flesh, it'll only be a handful of individuals that have good intentions for you. Hopefully, most won't have to go through, the craziness to actually understand that. But usually, you know, we're curious by nature. We're humans. So again, appreciate everybody tapping in. Um, Shout to everybody that's in the chat that's been pulling up. I appreciate it. Um, if you like what's being said, what's being produced on the platform, subscribe. If you subscribe, comment. And if you comment, share. You know, speaking on things that matter for the most part. Dripping in gems, man. Y'all stay woke or wake up. I'm gonna definitely tap back in with y'all again. Tell a friend to tell a friend, man. Share the live, share the content, and salutes. Appreciate y'all, man.